not that many that have been around for a long time and have survived throughout the years as poker's evolved. But you're one of them. I remember you were also you were wise to the online players being a bit more relevant, or excuse me, they're like using game theory and how they played and that kind of thing. You're like working on your game. It sounded like, uh, and many of the old guys that originally got into poker. Are you an old guy actually?
I think you could count me in that. I was like a bridge between, the young and the old, and now I'd say I'm in the old guy territory. But you bring up some very good points there about just how I view poker and things like that. And I distinctly remember in 1998 playing in the World Series of Poker, and I was a young gun, and I was really sharp and aggressive, and really playing hard. And I was playing with some of these legends of the game, that were like older, and they would scoff at my aggressive play and mock me, and I'm like, they sucked, right? I'm like, these guys suck. I'm like, you three that are doing you play terrible. And I remembered to myself, I said, never become that guy. Never become the old guy who looks at the young players and is like, oh, these idiots with these crazy aggressive plays. Yeah. So instead, what I figured what I always felt like it was important to do was have enough humility to be like, all right, I need to learn from them, right? So now I can combine the wisdom of all the poker knowledge that I've created on my own with also learning from these tools like solvers and things like that. And I did dive in pretty hard. And, ultimately I came away with solvers are an incredibly good learning tool, but they aren't the ultimate answer, Like I find the players that try to mimic outputs like perfectly, they fail because you can't. It's like no human, even you did, Jungleman. Like it's impossible to mimic what happens, with a solver. So I found that like understanding the theory is important, but then seeing how I think humans implement it incorrectly. And I find that like a lot of modern play that we see today, there's a lot of key mistakes, I think, in terms of the way that humans are interpreting the information and applying it, in a live setting.
Do you want to talk about those mistakes? And by the way, that sounds like a very dangerous combo. The wisdom of the old players plus the technology and the energy of the new ones. It's pretty intimidating, and yeah, it reminds me a bit of like apparently the optimal thing is not in the future wouldn't be. I've read this that it wouldn't be just like robots couldn't really totally replace humans for some reason of how the brain works, but actually it would be a combination of humans and robot teams. This vaguely reminds me of that parallel, but it's just kind of a cute thing. Like humans and robots working together as a team is apparently like seems like it's going to be the future. But anyway, yeah. Do you want to talk about some of those
Sure.
mistakes or just okay?
Sure. So first and foremost, I dove in, and obviously I didn't even understand how to use a solver. I didn't come from that world, so I hired a couple guys. One was a data scientist, the other one's a top player, and they helped me work, understand it and work through it. And I did so pretty hard when I was playing the Heads Up Challenge that I ended up losing, but I got a lot better as it went along. And what I ended up taking from that ultimately was I sort of extrapolated a lot of the information from those solvers to live, and then I realized, these people all study the same exact thing, right? Everyone's like, all right, three sizes. I got 1/3 pot, 2/3 pot, 1.5x. That's basically it. When people are inputting a solve, they're asking the computer three questions, or they're asking one question, but they're asking for one of three answers. Where a computer could come out with 600 answers, or like they could compute 600 different options, or even more, thousands, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I realized one of the things that they don't hardly anybody is studying is a limping strategy. And so for the Super High Roller Bowl, I started to implement a limping strategy that really broke their brains. Like when you think about how a solver works, right? For those that aren't that familiar, which I imagine most of your audience would be, a solver's when you have two players in the blinds, like the small blind and big blind, who can have like infinite rangers, it makes the solver break. Like it's so much more difficult, right, to figure out how to proceed forward. And it allowed me also deep stack to see a lot more flops without, say for example, you're opening like ace 10 suited and you get 3-bet and it's like too big and you have to like fold it or something, just for example. Well, if you limp, you're never folding. Like you get to see more flops, and you can also do so with a balanced range or whatnot. But ultimately I found that like unique sizing, right? Sizing that don't fall into the categories of what everyone studies really threw people for a curve. So instead of betting 2/3 pot a lot of the time, I was betting 80%. On flops that, require a quarter bet sizing, I was betting 50%, And so everyone's like, whoa, you're not balanced. I'm like, okay, I'm not balanced. Cool. But do you know which way? Do you know what my range is constructed of when I'm betting these things? And the answer is no, right? So yeah.
Go ahead.
No, so the point is like the whole point of GTO is not to be exploited. But if people don't know how you construct ranges and your sizes, they can't exploit you. Once they figure it out, like really smart guys like you, who start to notice, like, okay, well, when Daniel's betting 50%, he's way too strong. His range is nutted. And when he's betting quarter, it's like bluff heavy. And now you take advantage of me and start to exploit me. Well, then if I see that, now I might, come back at you and start flipping it on you, right? And that's the fun part for me, the leveling more. Not being a slave to like rolling the dice and saying, well, I rolled a 14. That means I got a 3-bet this one. Like, I didn't enjoy playing poker using randomization. I much prefer playing poker, like actually thinking about, my opponent and making it specific to them, especially in tournaments, right?